I don't know how long I stood there staring at the old cedar box. My father's handwriting had faded on the label, but I'd know it anywhere. Thick black ink, precise, almost military block letters, estate private, not to be opened without consent. His voice echoed in my head when I read it, that clipped, commanding tone, the one that always made me feel 12 again, even when I was 40. I opened the box anyway. He'd been dead for 4 months. I had every right to see what was left behind, especially after what the lawyer said during probate. That one sentence had been gnawing at me since the reading. There's an amendment to the will, handwritten, dated 6 years ago. I wasn't supposed to inherit the house, or the land, or the trust. All of that had belonged to my sister Marla, at least until that amendment showed up. She didn't take it well, not that I expected her to. Marla always thought she had it coming, like she'd earned our father's favor, just by tolerating him. She visited every weekend, sent him articles, cooked his meals when his hands started shaking. She played the part, and I disappeared, but this wasn't about her, not really. The first thing I pulled out of the cedar box was a photograph. It was dated 1974, my father, sitting at the edge of the dock behind the house. Next to him a boy, maybe 7 or 8, not me, not anyone I recognized. They were smiling, knees dangling over the water. My father had his hand on the boy's shoulder. I turned the photo over, one word written in faded ink, Micah. That name didn't belong to anyone in our family. I sat back, heart kicking harder now. I dug deeper into the box, a stack of letters tied with red ribbon, receipts, legal papers, old hospital records. The deeper I went, the worse it got. My father had another son. I don't know why it hit me so hard. It's not like he and my mother had a storybook marriage. They stayed together out of duty and guilt. 2 things he passed down like heirlooms. But this wasn't just an affair. This was a hidden life. Micah was born in 1966, 2 years before me. His mother's name was Angela Mercer. I found a birth certificate, notarized, folded inside a medical file, and a trust document. My father had set up an account, nothing massive, but enough to suggest he cared, or tried to. I flipped through each letter. Most were from Angela. Some were angry, some were scared. A few begged him to visit. The last one said Micah had died, 1993, motorcycle crash, 27 years old. That was the year my father started drinking again. I sat in the attic for 3 hours reading those letters. I kept hearing his voice in my head. All those years he told me to man up, to stop asking questions, to respect the past by not dragging it into the present. Now I knew why. Micah wasn't just some side note in my father's story. He was the original draft, the one who came first, the one he loved and lost before I was even born. That changed everything. I took the box downstairs and locked the front door. I needed time, space. I couldn't let Marla know, not yet. She'd turn it into some performance. She'd twist it until she was the victim again. And if she got her hands on these documents, she'd bury them, or worse, she'd destroy them. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my Uncle Ray. He answered on the second ring. "Hello, it's me," I said. "I found something." He went quiet. "Then how bad is..." I looked at the stack of papers on the table. "It's worse than we thought." Uncle Ray was the only one who ever hinted at my father's secrets. Once when I was 16 I heard them yelling in the garage. Ray was furious, accused him of abandoning someone. I didn't understand it at the time. My father brushed it off as family nonsense, said Ray drank too much, made things up. But now I knew better. Ray drove up the next morning. We didn't speak much while I showed him the box. His face hardened when he saw the photo. "Jesus," he muttered. "He kept it all. You knew about Micah?" Ray nodded once. "I met him twice. Why didn't you ever tell me?" He looked at me, eyes rimmed red. "Because your father made me swear I wouldn't, and because I thought it died with him." "Well, it didn't." Ray stayed the night. We drank bourbon and sat in silence. Every now and then he'd say something, half a sentence, a name, a place. But it never led to anything clear. What stuck with me most was this: "You weren't his first mistake," Ray said. "You were his second chance." The next morning I drove into town. I needed to know more about Angela Mercer. The public library still had microfiche files. I found a few articles,
One mentioned her name in connection with a lawsuit, a malpractice case from the early 90s. She worked as a nurse. The case was dismissed, but it was enough to make her leave the county. No mention of Micah, not in the papers, not in any obituaries. I called the hospital where Micah supposedly died. They had no record of him. That's when I knew something was wrong. He hadn't died, at least not the way the papers said. So I called in a favor. A guy I knew from college, works in data recovery and digital forensics. I sent him scans of the documents, asked if he could verify anything, birth certificate, trust info, social security data. Took him 3 days to get back to me. You're not gonna like this, he said. Try me. The trust exists, still active. Money's being withdrawn monthly. By who? Name on the account, Micah Rowan. I felt my throat close. He's alive? Looks that way, and you're not gonna believe where he's been living. I waited, 3 towns over from you, in a place called Oak Ridge. My hands went cold. I'd driven through Oak Ridge last week, stopped for gas, grabbed coffee. Micah was alive, and my father had lied about everything, not just to me, to the whole family. And if Micah was still out there, that meant I wasn't the only heir.
I didn't go to Oak Ridge right away. I told myself I needed more proof, that it could be a coincidence. Maybe the name Micah Rowan wasn't so rare after all. Maybe someone else was withdrawing from the trust. But deep down I already knew. I waited 2 days. Then I drove there. No plan. No idea what I'd say if I found him. Just a growing ache in my chest and too many questions packed into one small car. Oak Ridge was quiet. A grid of clean streets and brick storefronts that looked like they hadn't changed since the 80s. I stopped at a diner and ordered coffee I didn't touch. Looked out the window. Tried to imagine what kind of life Micah had built just 30 miles from where we buried the man who tried to erase him. I found the address from a property lookup. He owned a small house on Glenview Road. Blue shutters. 2-car driveway. No visible signs of kids or roommates. A truck parked out front. Plates matched the name. I sat in my car for 20 minutes watching the house. No one came out. I didn't knock. I wrote a letter instead. Short, careful. You don't know me, but we share a father. I found something you should see. If you're willing, meet me at the pond behind our father's house. Saturday, noon. I signed it with just my first name. No phone number, no return address. Dropped it in his mailbox and left. The weight nearly cracked me open. Saturday came fast. I went to the pond early, sat on the edge of the dock. Same spot from the photo. It was quiet except for the ripple of wind on the water. A part of me hoped he wouldn't show, that it would stay unfinished, unreal. But at 12:07 a truck pulled up. I didn't turn around at first, just listened. Door opened, then footsteps, slow, hesitant. "Are you him?" the voice said. I stood, turned, looked at him. He was about my height, maybe an inch taller. Broad shoulders, hair shaved close. His eyes were gray like mine. Same line in the jaw, same half scowl when he was unsure. I nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." He didn't speak for a moment. Then, "You look like him." "I know." We didn't talk much that day, just sat on the dock, watched the water. I handed him the photo. He stared at it for a long time, not blinking. "I thought I imagined this," he said. "I was so young." He kept everything. I said, "The letters, your birth certificate, trust docs." He laughed. Sharp, bitter. "Of course he did. He just never called. I didn't know you existed until 2 weeks ago." I figured. He looked at me again. "What do you want?" I paused, thought about it. "I want to know who he was. The real version, not the one we buried." Micah looked away. "You sure?" "No." He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. "I've been holding on to this since I was 19, he said. "Read it when you're ready." He stood, nodded once, walked back to his truck. I didn't stop him, not yet. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of whiskey and the envelope. Inside were 6 pages, all written in the same blocky handwriting I'd seen on every tool label, every file, every angry note he left us growing up. But this time it was different. The letter was addressed to Micah. "My son," it began, "I've failed you. I've spent my life pretending I could compartmentalize guilt, that I could love you quietly and still be a man of honor. But I've built a house of shame, and the cracks are showing." Line. He wrote about Angela,
about how scared he was to leave his marriage, about how his own father threatened to cut him off if he shamed the family name. He wrote about the trust as if it was some kind of apology, a coward's substitute for presence. He ended it with this: "You deserved better than money and silence, but it's all I ever had the nerve to give." I read it 3 times. Then I burned it, not out of anger, not as revenge, but because I knew what had to come next. Micah wasn't interested in reuniting. He wanted closure, but me, I wanted more than that. I wanted the truth out, all of it. Marla came by the next morning. She let herself in like always, arms full of folders and paperwork. "I think we should sell," she said without preamble. "Split the profits. You've got the trust. It's fair." I didn't answer. She sat at the table, saw the box. "What's that?" "Dad's real legacy," I said. She narrowed her eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" I slid a photo across the table. She picked it up. Her hand stiffened. "Who is this?" "His first son." She blinked. "You're joking." "No." She looked at me. Then the photo again. "This isn't funny, you know." "I'm not laughing." She didn't believe me. Not at first. I showed her the letters, the trust info, the hospital records, all of it. Her hands shook. "This would destroy the estate," she said. "It already is destroyed. What are you planning to do?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I'm going to tell the truth." "Why now?" she asked. "He's dead." I looked her in the eye. "Because he doesn't get to decide what we carry anymore." That was the moment I knew it had shifted. I wasn't the son cleaning up after a father's mistakes. I was the man who decided how the story ended.
I didn't sleep much after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the 2 of them, Micah and my father, on the dock. That smile, that hand on his shoulder. It haunted me in a way I couldn't name. Not anger, not jealousy. Something deeper, like the ground underneath my memories had shifted. I started making a timeline. Dates, events, where he was when Micah was born, where he was when I showed up. The overlap wasn't subtle, it was clean, intentional. He lived 2 lives with surgical precision. Ray called me the next day. "You all right?" he asked. No, he didn't respond. He knew better than to force it. "I want to ask you something," I said. "Go ahead." "Did you know I wasn't a first?" Ray let out a long breath. "Not until Angela called me." She was desperate. He stopped taking her calls, cut her off. I told him he had to make it right, and he didn't. "No," Ray said. "He never did." There was silence on the line. Then he added, "But you can." I didn't know what that meant at first, but I started writing. Not a book, not a letter, a record of everything. The box, the trust, the lies, the timeline, my own memories, stitched together with new context. It felt like taking inventory of a broken house before knocking it down. I hired a lawyer next, not for a lawsuit, for a declaration of paternity. It was a long shot. No DNA, no living father, but the trust documents and birth certificate were strong, and Micah agreed to sign an affidavit. I told him what I was doing. He looked at me like I was insane. "You think I want to be part of that family?" he said. "No, I don't, but you are. And they deserve to know." He shook his head. "No one deserves this." The day the papers were filed, Marla called. Her voice was sharp, controlled rage. "You're destroying everything he built." "He destroyed it," I said. "I'm just telling the truth. No one needs to know." "It doesn't change anything. It changes everything." "You think Mom didn't know?" she snapped. The line went quiet. I hadn't thought about that. "Not really." "Did she?" I asked. Marla sighed. "She found a letter once, burned it before I could read it. I was 15. "What did she say?" "She said your father had shadows that weren't ours to chase." That line stayed with me. Shadows, not secrets, not mistakes. Shadows. The court hearing was short. Judge reviewed the documents, asked a few questions, stamped the order. Micah Rowan, legally acknowledged as the biological child of Martin Ellison. It made the local paper. Small column on page 3, no photo, just a headline. Family estate dispute reveals hidden heir. Marla didn't speak to me for 3 months. Ray called twice a week, said he was proud, that it was long overdue, that someone finally had the guts to clean the bloodline. I didn't feel clean, I felt gutted. Micah came by again, this time, unannounced.
He stood in the doorway holding a single envelope. "I don't want the money," he said. "I know. I don't want a name. You've had it your whole life." He nodded. "But not like this." He handed me the envelope. "What's this?" "My part," he said. "The truth. What it was like. You do what you want with it." He turned to leave. I stopped him. "Do you hate him?" Micah paused. "No," he said, "but I made sure I'd never be like him." Then he was gone. I opened the envelope after he left. It was a letter, not to me, to his mother. Micah had written it 10 years ago, trying to make peace after she got sick. In it he described the silence, the birthdays missed, the weekends he sat waiting, the lies Angela told to protect his heart. But one line cut deepest. "I've spent my life trying to be seen by a man who made me feel like a secret." I read that line again and again, because I understood it, not from his side but from mine. My father kept us both in the dark, 2 sons, orbiting a man who never gave either of us the whole truth. The house felt different after that, lighter, like the walls didn't have to hold anything back anymore. I boxed up the documents, put them in the cedar box where it all started, sealed it, drove to the pond. The dock creaked under my weight as I walked out. I tossed the box into the water, watched it float, then sink. He's not here anymore, but we are. Me, Micah, even Marla, in her silence. We're the ones left to carry what he tried to bury, and I'm done carrying it quietly.
Fall came early that year. The trees behind the house turned faster than I remembered. Sharp yellows, deep reds, like the whole place had been waiting for a reason to change. Marlo eventually called. No apology, just a question. "Is it true you threw the box in the pond?" "What was in it?" "Everything." She didn't ask for more. We met for coffee 2 days later. Neutral ground, public, safe. She looked tired, not angry anymore, just worn out in that way grief wears a face down. "I hated him at the end," she said. "Did you?" "I don't know," I told her. "I think I hated the version of him I made up, the one that was supposed to protect us, the one who never existed." She nodded, stirred her coffee. "I used to think he was complicated, but maybe he was just weak." I didn't answer. We sat like that a while, quiet. Then she said, "I don't want to fight about the estate." "Neither do I. We can split it, equal thirds, Micah included." I looked at her, really looked. "You sure?" "No," she said. "But I don't want to carry his shame into another decade." We hired a mediator. It wasn't clean, nothing ever is, but we worked it out. The land, the house, the money, we made it official. 3 names, 3 signatures, 1 family, no longer pretending. Micah didn't come to the signing, didn't want to. He emailed once, months later, said thanks, said he was moving west, said we probably wouldn't hear from him again. I didn't blame him. He'd been written out of a story before it began. He owed none of us a second draft. I started renting out the house. Too many ghosts in the walls to live there, but I couldn't sell it. Not yet, maybe never. Some part of me needed to keep it standing, as evidence. Ray visits sometimes. We sit on the back porch, drink bourbon, watch the light move across the pond. One night he said, "Your father would have hated all this." I smiled. "Then I'm doing it right." He laughed, clinked his glass to mine. "You spend your whole life trying to make sense of the story you were born into. You believe what they tell you. You fill in the blanks with loyalty. But sometimes the truth doesn't show up until the man who kept it is 6 feet under. And sometimes the real legacy isn't in the land or the money. It's in what you do when the silence breaks." I kept one thing from the cedar box. The photo, the one with Micah on the dock. It's framed now, on a shelf by the front door, not to honor my father, but to remember what secrets cost, and what it takes to end them.